The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Wellington Academy of Music, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. 16-year-old May stood frozen at the entrance to the main practice hall, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room was empty now, but the air still seemed to vibrate with the ghost of melodies played by students who belonged here, unlike her. May adjusted the strap of her second-hand backpack and glanced down at her uniform. Though she'd spent hours the night before pressing the pleated skirt and blazer, they still looked wrong on her. Too big in some places, too tight in others. Hand-me-downs from the school's donation bin, another reminder that she wasn't like the other students. "You have until 1 o'clock, Mrs. Patel had told her, checking her watch with an impatient flick of her wrist. The room is usually empty during lunch. Don't touch anything except the practice upright in the corner. But it wasn't the humble upright piano in the corner that called to May now. It was the gleaming grand piano that stood in the center of the room like a sleeping giant. Black and perfect, its lid propped open to reveal the complex architecture of strings and hammers within. May had never touched a grand piano before. The scholarship that had brought her to Wellington 3 weeks ago was a miracle, the kind her grandma still thanked the ancestors for every night. But it didn't erase 16 years of life. In a tiny apartment where the closest thing to music was the rhythmic clacking of her mother's sewing machine, May set her lunch, bagged down and walked toward the piano, her footsteps echoing in the empty room. The other students were in the dining hall now, laughing and talking about weekend plans and summer homes and private lessons with famous musicians. Places May didn't fit. This morning she'd overheard 2 girls whispering as she walked past. "That's her. The charity case from the east side. My father says they only let her in to look good for the donors." May had kept her eyes down, pretending not to hear. She was getting good at that. Now, standing before the grand piano, she let her fingers hover above the keys without touching them. Even this felt like trespassing. Back home, May had taught herself to play on a paper keyboard she'd drawn carefully on the back of old posters. She'd sneak into the community center on Thursdays when the janitor, old Mr. Wu, would let her practice on the out-of-tune upright for 20 minutes before closing time. "You got something special in those hands, little sparrow," he'd tell her. "Something that doesn't care about where you come from." The memory gave her courage. May sat down on the bench, her back straight the way she'd seen the other students sit. The keys gleamed before her like a path into another world. Slowly she lowered her hands and pressed a single key. The note rang out, pure and perfect, hanging in the air like something alive. May closed her eyes, savoring it. So different from the dull, muffled sound of the community center piano. This was how music was supposed to sound. She played another note, then another, building into the opening bars of a simple piece she'd been teaching herself from a tattered book she'd found at the second-hand shop. Her fingers moved hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as the music began to flow. So absorbed was she in the sound that she didn't hear the practice room door open. Didn't notice the group of students entering until their laughter cut through her music like a knife. "Well, look what we have here," said a voice, cool and sharp as glass. "The scholarship girl thinks she's a pianist now." May's hands jerked away from the keys as if burned. She turned to see Lizzie Chen standing in the doorway, flanked by her usual group of friends. Lizzie was everything May was not: confident, wealthy, poised. Her father owned half the high-rises downtown, and her mother sat on the school's board of directors. I'm sorry," May stammered, rising quickly from the bench. "Mrs. Patel said I could practice during lunch." "On the upright," said Lizzie, walking into the room with deliberate steps, her designer shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. "Not on the Steinway. Do you even know what a Steinway is?" She ran a manicured hand along the piano's glossy surface. "This piano cost more than your family will make in a decade." The other students snickered. There were 5 of them altogether, all wearing the same uniform as May, but somehow making it look like designer fashion. "My grandfather donated this piano to the school," Lizzie continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It's for serious students. Real musicians." May felt her cheeks burning. She clutched her hands together to stop them from shaking. "I was just what? Pretending you belong here?" asked one of the boys, Theo, leaning against the wall with crossed arms. "Everyone knows you only got in because the school needed to fill their diversity quota." "I passed the entrance exam," May said quietly, finding a sliver of courage from somewhere deep inside. The same place the music came from, perhaps. "Please," snorted Lizzie. My private tutor costs more per hour than your entire scholarship. You can't compete with 12 years of professional training. Another girl, Amara, stepped forward and played a complex run of notes on the piano, her technique flawless. That's how it's supposed to sound, she said with a smirk. Not like a cat walking across the keys. May fought back tears. She had been proud of the piece she was playing, proud of teaching herself despite having no proper piano, no lessons, no advantages. Now it seemed silly, childish. Where did you learn to play anyway? Asked Lizzie, looking May up and down with calculated curiosity. Let me guess, YouTube tutorials on a keyboard from the discount store? The group laughed again, the sound bouncing off the high ceiling and surrounding May like a cage. She wished she could disappear, melt into the floor, be anywhere but here facing these people who saw right through her pretense of belonging. I bet she's never even been to a real concert, said Theo, shaking his head with mock sympathy. Probably thinks Chopin is a type of food. Stop it, came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A girl May hadn't seen before stood there, her arms folded across her chest. She was tall with short dark hair and an intensity in her eyes that made even Lizzie straighten up a bit. Mind your own business. Jun? Lizzie said, but there was a slight waver in her voice now. 5 against 1 seems like poor odds, said June, walking into the room. Even for you, Lizzie. May watched this unexpected defender, unsure what to do. No one had stood up for her since she arrived at Wellington. We're just having a little fun, Lizzie said with a shrug, teaching the new girl how things work around here. Jun rolled her eyes. Yeah, I can see that. Very educational. She turned to May. Ignore them. Most of them can play the notes but can't feel the music. That's why they're so threatened by anyone with actual passion. Please, Lizzie scoffed. She was butchering a beginner's piece on a piano she has no right to touch. Jun looked at May with interest. What were you playing? May hesitated, embarrassed to admit the simplicity of the piece. Just a little Mozart. K545, the first movement. June's eyebrows rose slightly. Sonata in C major? That's not as easy as people think. The clarity it demands is brutal. Before May could respond, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Lizzie checked her expensive watch and sighed dramatically. As entertaining as this has been, some of us have actual classes to attend, with actual talent to develop. She nodded to her friends and they began to file out, each giving May a final dismissive look. At the door, Lizzie turned back. Oh, and scholarship girl? The practice rooms are for practicing, not for hiding during lunch because you can't afford the cafeteria food. When they were gone, May let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jun was still there watching her with curious eyes. Thanks, May said quietly, gathering her things. You didn't have to do that, Jun shrugged. Lizzie's group thinks they own this place because their parents write big checks. Someone needs to remind them they don't. May nodded, still fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. I'm Jun, by the way, third-year composition major. May, first year, I don't know yet. Piano, I guess, if they let me stay. Jun studied her for a moment. You taught yourself to play? May nodded, embarrassed. I didn't have a real piano. I practiced on a paper keyboard most of the time. To her surprise, June didn't laugh. Instead, she looked impressed. That takes serious determination. And a good ear. She glanced at the piano, then back at May. Play something for me sometime when the vultures aren't circling. I'd like to hear what you can really do. With that, Jun left, leaving May alone in the practice room. The grand piano stood silent now, but it no longer seemed like a forbidden object. Instead, it felt like a challenge, a mountain to climb. May ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, feeling the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. The mocking laughter of Lizzie and her friends still echoed in her mind, but alongside it now was a new thought, taking root like a tiny seed. Maybe, just maybe, she did belong here after all, not because of where she came from or what she owned, but because of what lived inside her, a love for music that no amount of ridicule could silence. With renewed determination, May picked up her backpack and headed to her next class. She would be back tomorrow, and the day after that. And someday, she promised herself, she would play this piano so beautifully that no one would dare question her right to touch it again. For the next week, May avoided the main practice hall during lunch. Instead, she ate her homemade rice and vegetables quickly in a quiet corner of the courtyard. then spent the remaining time in the library, poring over music theory books that the other students seemed to know by heart. Her fingers would tap silently on the table, practicing the movements of pieces she couldn't play aloud. The mockery from Lizzie and her friends hadn't stopped. If anything, it had gotten worse. They would mimic her walk in the hallways, exaggerating her slight limp, a leftover from a childhood illness her family couldn't afford to treat properly. They would speak in fake accents when she passed, loud enough for her to hear but not loud enough for teachers to notice. Just ignore them, Jun had advised when she caught May hiding in the bathroom, wiping away tears. They're not worth your energy. But it was hard to ignore people who seemed determined to remind you every day that you didn't belong. Friday afternoon brought rain, turning the school grounds into a glistening maze of puddles. May had stayed late to catch up on music history homework, and the building was nearly empty by the time she finished. As she packed her worn backpack, a sound drifted down the hallway, someone playing the piano in the main practice hall. The music was beautiful, flowing like the rain outside, and May found herself drawn toward it. She stood in the doorway, watching as Mr. Huang, the school's head piano teacher, played with his eyes closed, his body swaying slightly with the music. May had seen him in the hallways but had never attended his classes, which were reserved for advanced students. He was known for being brilliant but strict, reducing some students to tears with his cutting critiques. When he finished, the final notes hanging in the air like mist, he opened his eyes and spotted May. "Don't lurk in doorways," he said, his voice neither kind nor unkind. "Either come in or go away." May hesitated, then stepped into the room. "I'm sorry. I was just listening. It was beautiful." Mr. Huang studied her, his eyes sharp behind round glasses. "You're the scholarship student. From the east side." It wasn't a question, but May nodded anyway. Everyone seemed to know who she was and where she came from, as if her background was stamped across her forehead. "You play?" he asked, gesturing to the piano. "A little," she admitted. "I'm self-taught." He raised an eyebrow. "Self-taught? Interesting. Most self-taught players develop terrible habits." "Show me." May blinked in surprise. "Show you?" "Play something. Anything you know." He stood up from the bench and motioned for her to sit. Panic flooded through her. Play for Mr. Huang, the teacher whose approval even Lizzie craved? But he was waiting, his expression unreadable, and May knew refusing would only confirm what everyone thought, that she didn't belong here. She sat down, wiping her damp palms on her skirt. The same piano she had touched that day when Lizzie and her friends had caught her. The memory made her fingers tremble. "Whenever you're ready," Mr. Huang said, his tone suggesting he didn't have all day. May took a deep breath and began to play the same Mozart sonata she'd started before. Her fingers felt stiff at first, weighed down by nervousness, but as the familiar notes flowed, she began to relax. The music had always been her safe place, even when played on a paper keyboard in her tiny bedroom. She played the first movement, focusing so intently that she almost forgot Mr. Huang was there until she finished, and looked up to find him watching her with a curious expression. "Where did you learn to hold your hands that way?" he asked. May looked down at her hands, suddenly self-conscious. "I copied it from videos and pictures in books." "Is it wrong?" "Not wrong, unusual." He demonstrated a different position. "Most teachers would have you do it this way." "I didn't have a teacher," May said softly. "No, you didn't." He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Play again. The same piece. But this time don't think about the notes. Think about what the music is saying." May wasn't sure what he meant, but she began again, trying to focus on the feeling of the piece rather than the technical aspects. Halfway through, Mr. Huang stopped her. "You're rushing. The notes aren't going anywhere. Let them breathe." He sat on a chair nearby. Again. For the next 30 minutes, Mr. Huang had her play the same piece over and over, stopping her to correct fingering, timing, dynamics. His critiques were direct but not cruel, and May absorbed every word, hungry for the guidance she had never had. Finally, he checked his watch. "It's getting late. Do your parents know where you are?" "My mom works nights," May explained. "She won't be home until morning." Mr. Huang seemed to make a decision. "The practice rooms are open until 9. If you want to come back tomorrow morning, I can give you a proper assessment. See if we can move you from music fundamentals to something more suitable." May's heart leapt. Music Fundamentals was the basic class all scholarship students were placed in, regardless of ability. Being moved up would mean, "Really?" she asked, unable to keep the hope from her voice. 7:30, he said, gathering his things. "Don't be late." After he left, May remained at the piano, stunned by this unexpected turn. Could this be her chance to prove herself, to show everyone that she deserved to be here? She practiced for another hour, incorporating Mr. Huang's suggestions until the janitor kindly reminded her the building was closing. The rain had stopped and the streets glistened under the streetlights as May began the long walk home. She couldn't afford the bus fare, having spent her last coins on new pencils for music notation class. By the time she reached the apartment building where she lived with her mother and grandmother, her shoes were soaked through and her hands were numb with cold, but her heart was lighter than it had been in weeks. She found her grandmother asleep in front of the small television and her mother's note on the kitchen table. "There's rice and vegetables in the fridge. Don't wait up. Love you." May heated her dinner and ate quickly, her mind still on Mr. Huang's offer. 7:30. She would need to leave by 6 to walk there in time, which meant waking up at 5:30 to help Grandma with her morning medicine first. She was setting her alarm when her phone pinged, a rare occurrence since she had no friends to text her. It was a school-wide notification. Annual fall showcase auditions next Friday. Sign-up sheet posted in main hall. All students encouraged to participate. The fall showcase. May had heard the other students talking about it. It was a major event where the best students performed for parents, alumni, and even talent scouts from prestigious music colleges. First years rarely participated, and certainly not scholarship students still in music fundamentals. A crazy idea began to form in her mind. If Mr. Huang moved her up from fundamentals, could she possibly— No, it was too ambitious, too risky. But as she lay in bed that night listening to the occasional car passing on the street below, the idea wouldn't leave her. She imagined herself on the stage, playing so beautifully that even Lizzie would have to admit she belonged. She imagined her mother and grandmother in the audience, their faces shining with pride. It was a beautiful dream, but dreams had sharp edges when you were from the East Side. People like her didn't get spotlights and applause. They got night shifts and tired feet and maybe next year for birthday presents. Still, as sleep began to claim her, May held onto a small spark of hope. Mr. Huang had listened to her play and hadn't dismissed her. He had offered help. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Her alarm sounded in what felt like minutes rather than hours. 5:30, still dark outside. May dragged herself out of bed, moving quietly so as not to wake her grandmother in the small bedroom they shared. She laid out the morning pills with a glass of water, then quickly dressed in her uniform, her fingers clumsy with sleep and anticipation. The streets were mostly empty as she walked to school, the eastern sky just beginning to lighten. By the time she reached Wellington's imposing gates, the sun was up, painting the stone buildings gold. The campus was peaceful at this hour, no students around to stare or whisper. May headed straight for the practice hall, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. She was 20 minutes early, but to her surprise, Mr. Huang was already there, sorting through sheet music at the piano. "You're early," he noted, checking his watch. "Good. Punctuality matters in music as much as in life." May set down her backpack, suddenly nervous. What if yesterday had been a fluke? What if in the clear light of morning Mr. Huang realized she wasn't worth his time? But he simply handed her a piece of sheet music she'd never seen before. "Sight reading test," he explained. "Take a moment to look it over, then play as much as you can." May stared at the page, her heart sinking. She had taught herself to read music from library books, but this piece was more complex than anything she'd tried before. Still, she studied it carefully, trying to memorize the patterns before placing her hands on the keys. She played slowly, making several mistakes but pushing through until she reached the bottom of the page. When she finished, she looked up anxiously. Mr. Huang's face gave nothing away. "Now play something you know well, something that shows me what you can really do." May thought for a moment, then began to play a piece she had learned from an old book of Chopin preludes found at a yard sale. It was the only piece she knew by heart, having practiced it countless times on her paper keyboard at home and during her precious minutes at the community center. As she played, she forgot about Mr. Huang, forgot about Lizzie and her friends, forgot about the fall showcase. There was only the music, saying all the things she never could, about loneliness and hope and the beauty that existed even in difficult places. When she finished, the room was silent. Mr. Huang studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink into herself. Finally, he spoke. "You have unusual talent, Miss Chen, raw and unpolished but genuine. I'm moving you to intermediate piano studio, effective Monday." May couldn't believe what she was hearing. Intermediate? Not just beginning? "Would you prefer beginning?" he asked dryly. No, sir. Thank you." Mr. Huang gathered his papers. "Don't thank me yet. The work is just starting. You'll need to practice every day. I can arrange for you to use the practice rooms during lunch and after school." May nodded eagerly. "I will, I promise." As he walked toward the door, he paused. "And Miss Chen, I expect to see your name on the fall showcase sign-up sheet." After he left, May sat at the piano, stunned and elated. Intermediate piano studio, the fall showcase, a real chance to prove herself. Outside the practice hall windows, the morning sun shone bright, burning away the last traces of dawn mist. A new day, and for May, perhaps a new beginning. News traveled fast at Wellington Academy. By Monday morning, everyone knew that May, the scholarship girl from the East Side, had been moved directly to intermediate piano studio, skipping 2 levels and landing in the same class as students who had been playing since they were toddlers. There must be some mistake. May overheard Lizzie saying loudly in the hallway between classes. Maybe they felt sorry for her. You know how Mr. Huang gets with his charity cases, but Mr. Huang wasn't known for charity. He was known for his uncompromising standards and brutal honesty. If he had moved May up, it was because he believed she belonged there. Still, as May entered the intermediate studio classroom that afternoon, doubts crept in. The room was smaller than the main practice hall, with 8 upright pianos arranged in a semicircle. The other students were already seated, their postures perfect, their uniforms pristine. They turned to stare as she walked in, clutching her second-hand music books. "Ah, Miss Chen," Mr. Huang said from the center of the room. "Take the piano near the window." May felt the weight of eyes on her back as she made her way to the empty seat. She recognized a few faces, including Amara, one of Lizzie's friends who had mocked her playing. "Today we're starting work on pieces for the fall showcase," Mr. Huang announced. "Each of you will perform a solo piece of your choice approved by me. Miss Chen, since you're new, you'll need to catch up quickly. Have you chosen a piece yet?" Put on the spot, May's mind went blank. She had been so focused on being moved to this class that she hadn't thought beyond that victory. I was thinking maybe Chopin," she stammered. "The Prelude in E minor." A few students exchanged glances. The piece was simple compared to what most of them would be playing. Mr. Huang nodded. "A good choice for your current level. We'll start today with technique exercises, then move to individual work." The next hour was the most challenging of May's life. The technique exercises, scales and arpeggios played in complex patterns, revealed the gaps in her self-taught knowledge. Her fingers fumbled where the others flowed smoothly, and she could feel their judgment with every mistake. When they moved to individual practice, Mr. Huang spent time with each student while the others worked quietly. May tried to focus on her piece, but anxiety made her hands shake. When Mr. Huang finally came to her piano, she felt like she might be sick. "Play from the beginning," he instructed. May took a deep breath and began. The Prelude in E minor was a short piece, melancholy and deceptively simple. She had loved it from the first time she'd heard it on a worn CD from the library. She played better than she had during the exercises, but still hit wrong notes that made her wince. When she finished, she waited for Mr. Huang's critique, certain it would be devastating. "Your technique needs work," he said, his voice matter-of-fact. "But you understand the heart of this piece. That's rarer than perfect fingering." He made some notations on her sheet music. "Practice these sections, 2 hours a day minimum." As he moved on to the next student, May let out the breath she'd been holding. Not praise exactly, but not the dismissal she had feared. After class, as she gathered her books, Amara approached her. "Just so you know," she said, her voice low, "everyone's talking about how you're only here because of diversity quotas. No one actually believes you earned this spot." May said nothing, keeping her eyes on her books. "The fall showcase isn't some school talent show," Amara continued. "Conservatory scouts attend. Family donors. People who matter." She smiled thinly. It would be so embarrassing for you when you fail. Before May could respond, June appeared beside her. Problem here? She asked, looking between May and Amara. Amara's smile widened. Just welcoming our new classmate. See you tomorrow, May. She walked away, joining a group of students by the door. Ignore her, June said. She's just worried because her technique is perfect, but her playing has all the emotion of a robot. May managed a small smile. Thanks again, Jun shrugged. Congratulations on the promotion. Mr. Huang doesn't move people up without good reason. She hesitated. Look, a few of us practice together sometimes. Nothing formal, just helping each other out. You should join. Before May could answer, June was gone, leaving her with an unexpected feeling of hope. The next few weeks fell into a grueling rhythm. May woke at 5 each morning to help her grandmother, walked to school, attended classes, practiced during lunch break, attended more classes, then stayed until the janitor kicked her out at 9. By the time she got home each night, her fingers ached and her mind buzzed with music. Her mother noticed the change. You look tired, she said one rare evening when they were both home for dinner. Is it too much? This new school? No, May said quickly. It's good. It's where I need to be. Her mother studied her face. Your father would be proud of you. He always said you had music in your soul. May nodded, her throat tight. Her father had died when she was 8, a factory accident that left them struggling to survive on her mother's earnings as a hotel housekeeper. He had been the one to bring home that first worn CD of classical piano music saying, Listen, little one, this is what dreams sound like. The memory strengthened her resolve. She would make the most of this chance, not just for herself but for her father who had seen something in her before anyone else. May began joining June's informal practice group. They met in empty classrooms or, when the weather allowed, in a quiet corner of the school garden. Besides June, there were 2 others, Tao, a brilliant violinist with social anxiety so severe he rarely spoke, and Lee, a pianist on scholarship like May, though from the west side with its good schools and safe streets. They were outcasts in different ways. Tao for his awkwardness, Lee for his family's financial struggles, June for her bluntness and refusal to play social games. With them, May found a small space of belonging. Your problem, June told her after listening to her play the Chopin prelude one afternoon, is that you're still playing like someone might catch you and tell you to stop. Like you're apologizing for each note. Isn't that what everyone expects? May asked. For me to apologize for being here? Who cares what they expect? June countered. Play like you own the piano. Like you have every right to be there. Easy to say, harder to do, especially when Lizzie and her friends had escalated their campaign against her. They would stand outside the practice room while she worked, making just enough noise to disrupt her concentration. They spread rumors that she was sleeping with Mr. Huang to get special treatment. Worst of all, they scheduled their own practice times to overlap with hers whenever possible, forcing her to listen to their flawless playing, a constant reminder of the years of training she had missed. One afternoon, 3 weeks before the fall showcase, May arrived at her usual practice room to find it already occupied by Lizzie. She was playing Chopin too, but not the simple prelude May had chosen. She was playing the Ballade No. 1 in G minor, one of the most challenging pieces in the repertoire, and she was playing it beautifully. May stood in the doorway, transfixed despite herself. Lizzie's technique was impeccable, her timing perfect, each note crystal clear. When she finished, she looked up and saw May watching. Enjoying the show? She asked, not bothering to hide her smirk. It was beautiful, May said honestly. Something flickered in Lizzie's eyes, surprise at the genuine compliment. Perhaps. This is what real training sounds like, she said after a moment. 12 years of private lessons with the best teachers money can buy. Not some natural talent hobby. I know, May admitted. I'll never catch up to that. But I can still play. Lizzie closed her sheet music. The fall showcase isn't about can play, it's about excellence, perfection. She studied May. You should withdraw. Save yourself the humiliation. Why do you care? May asked, genuinely curious. You're going to play brilliantly. Everyone knows it. Why does it matter if I embarrass myself? Lizzie stood gathering her things. It matters because this school has standards. Traditions. When they let just anyone perform, it devalues everyone's accomplishments. She walked to the door, pausing beside May. Besides, you're wasting a spot that could go to someone who actually has a future in music. After Lizzie left, May sat at the piano, her confidence shaken. The truth was, Lizzie was right about one thing. May would never catch up to 12 years of professional training. No amount of determination could replace the childhood she hadn't had, the opportunities she'd missed. But as she placed her hands on the keys and began to play her prelude, she remembered what Jun had said. Play like you own the piano, like you have every right to be there. And she did have a right to be there, not because she was as technically skilled as Lizzie, but because she had something to say through music, something that came from a different kind of life, with different kinds of struggles and joys. For the first time, she played without apology, letting the melancholy of the piece flow through her fingers. She thought of her father, of her mother working night shifts, of her grandmother's gnarled hands that had once played a village flute in the old country. She thought of the paper keyboard she had practiced on for years, the community center piano with its sticky keys, the dream she had held on to when everything said to let it go. When she finished, she was startled to find Mr. Huang standing in the doorway. "That," he said quietly, "is what I heard when I first listened to you play. Not perfect, but real." "Lizzie just played the ballad number 1, May said. It was flawless." "Yes, I heard." Mr. Huang entered the room. "Miss Park plays with technical brilliance. She will go far." He sat down beside the piano. "But there are many technically brilliant pianists in the world. What's rarer is a musician who makes listeners feel something true." He placed a sheet of music on the piano. May looked at the title and her eyes widened. It was the ballad number 1, the very piece Lizzie had just played. "This is what you should play for the showcase," he said. May stared at him in disbelief. "I can't play this. It's far beyond my level. The notes, perhaps, but not the meaning." Mr. Huang tapped the music. 3 weeks is not much time. You will need to work harder than you ever have. But I believe you can do it." "Why?" May asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me?" Mr. Huang was quiet for a moment. "Because 30 years ago I was a boy in a village with no piano, teaching myself on a paper keyboard." He smiled slightly at her shock. "We recognize our own, Miss Chen. Now shall we begin?" Learning Chopin's Ballade number 1 in 3 weeks was like trying to climb a mountain in tennis shoes. The piece was nearly 9 minutes long, with sections that shifted from gentle melodies to furious, technically demanding passages. Professional pianists spent months perfecting it. May had 21 days. "Again," Mr. Huang said, stopping her for the 5th time in 10 minutes. "Your left hand is rushing. Feel the rhythm, don't count it." It was nearly 8 in the evening, and they had been working since classes ended at 3. May's fingers were stiff, her back ached, and her head pounded from concentrating so intensely. But she started again from the section he indicated, trying to let the music flow naturally rather than mechanically counting beats in her head. "Better," Mr. Huang said when she finished the passage. He checked his watch. "That's enough for today. Same time tomorrow." As he gathered his things, May remained at the piano, flexing her sore fingers. "Mr. Huang," she said hesitantly, "do you really think I can learn this in time?" He paused, considering her question seriously. "The question isn't whether you can learn all the notes perfectly. You can't, not in 3 weeks. The question is whether you can capture the essence of the piece, make the audience feel what Chopin intended them to feel." He adjusted his glasses. "And that, Miss Chen, depends entirely on how much of yourself you're willing to put into it." After he left, May stayed another hour, repeating the sections they had worked on until her fingers moved more confidently across the keys. By the time she walked home, the streets were dark and most people were already in bed. Her grandmother was waiting up, sitting by the window in her small rocking chair. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said in their native language as May set down her backpack. "I have to," May replied, sitting on the worn footstool at her grandmother's feet. "This is my chance to show everyone I belong there." Her grandmother's weathered hand stroked May's hair. "You have nothing to prove to those rich children. Your worth isn't decided by their opinion. It's not just about them," May tried to explain. "It's about showing myself what I can do, and maybe," she hesitated, "maybe if I play well enough at the showcase there could be scholarship opportunities for college. Real ones, not just charity spots," her grandmother sighed. "Just don't forget to eat and sleep, little bird. Music won't matter if you make yourself sick." The next day at school, May found a notice in her locker. the official showcase program listing all performers and their pieces. Her name was there alongside Chopin Ballade No. 1 in G minor, Op. 23. Seeing it in print made it real in a way that practicing hadn't. She was actually going to perform this monumental piece in front of the entire school. Parents, donors, and talent scouts. And directly above her name was Lizzie's, also playing the ballade. Interesting choice of program, Jun said, appearing beside May as she stared at the notice. You and the princess playing the same piece. Bold move. Mr. Huang suggested it, May admitted. Jun whistled low. Huang doesn't do anything without a reason. He's setting up a direct comparison between you two. She studied the program. You're playing last too, right after Lizzie. That's either really good or really bad. What do you mean? Either you'll benefit from the comparison and show everyone a different interpretation, or, June trailed off. Or I'll look like a joke next to her perfect performance, May finished. June shrugged. Guess we'll find out. Word spread quickly that both May and Lizzie would be playing the same piece at the showcase. It became the talk of the school, with students speculating about whether it was a deliberate challenge from Mr. Huang or a misguided choice by May. No one seemed to believe she had a chance against Lizzie's years of training. It's genius, actually, Lee told her during their lunch practice group. If you play just after her, the piece will still be fresh in everyone's mind. They'll be able to feel the differences in your interpretation. If they're not too busy laughing at my mistakes, May said. Stop that, June said sharply. Self-pity is boring. Either withdraw if you're scared or commit fully and give it everything you have. Tao, who rarely spoke, looked up from his violin. I heard you practicing yesterday, he said quietly. Through the wall. It made me feel things. Coming from Tao, this was high praise. May felt a small spark of confidence return. These people, her friends, believed in her. Maybe that was enough. The days blurred together. May developed a routine. Up at 5, school all day, practice with Mr. Huang until 8, additional practice until 9, then home to collapse into exhausted sleep. Her mother worried about the dark circles under her eyes but supported her dedication, packing extra food to keep her energy up during the long days. 1 week before the showcase, disaster struck. May arrived at school to find water pouring from the ceiling of the practice room she usually used. A pipe had burst overnight and the room would be closed for repairs for at least 2 weeks. All the other practice rooms are booked solid, the school secretary told her with a shrug. You'll have to work something out with the other students. May spent her lunch period going from room to room, asking if anyone would share their time slot. Most ignored her or claimed they needed the full time. By the end of the day, she was desperate enough to approach Lizzie after class. Excuse me, she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. I was wondering if I could use half of your practice time this week. My room is flooded and the showcase is coming up. Let me get this straight, Lizzie interrupted, her eyebrows raised in amusement. You want me to give up my practice time so you can prepare to embarrass yourself playing the same piece as me? She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. That's priceless, May held her ground. I'll take any time slot you don't want. Early morning, late evening, please. For a moment, something like consideration flickered in Lizzie's eyes. Then she shook her head. Sorry, scholarship girl. Some of us have earned our place here. We don't get handouts. As Lizzie walked away, Amara beside her, May fought back tears of frustration. Without regular practice time, she would never be ready. Everything she had worked for was slipping away because of a broken pipe and petty cruelty. I heard, June said, finding May sitting alone on a bench in the courtyard. Tough break with the practice room. May nodded miserably. I've tried everywhere. No one will share. Jun was quiet for a moment. There might be another option. It's not ideal, but she hesitated. Do you know the old theater building? The one behind the science block that they don't use anymore? I've seen it, May said. Isn't it locked up? Jun pulled a key from her pocket. Usually. But some of us found a way in last year. There's an old piano there. It's out of tune and some of the keys stick, but it's better than nothing. May stared at the key. Won't we get in trouble? Only if we get caught. June placed the key in May's palm. Side door behind the dumpsters. The alarm hasn't worked in years. Just don't turn on too many lights and don't tell anyone else. That night, after everyone else had gone home, May slipped across the dark campus to the abandoned theater building. The key worked, and she found herself in a dusty corridor that smelled of old wood and forgotten performances. The piano was on the stage, an ancient upright with yellowed keys and faded wood. When May played the first note, the sound was slightly flat with a metallic quality that spoke of neglect. But it was a piano, and right now it was her only hope. She practiced until midnight, getting used to the quirks of the old instrument. Some keys needed extra pressure. Others made a slight clicking sound when pressed. But after an hour, she stopped noticing these flaws and lost herself in the music. For the next 5 days, May followed the same pattern: regular classes during the day, then returning to campus after dinner to practice in the abandoned theater until well past midnight. The old piano became her friend, its imperfections somehow making the music more authentic. In the empty theater, with dust motes dancing in the beam of her small reading light, she could play without fear of judgment or comparison. On the 6th night, as she reached the challenging coda of the ballade, she became aware of someone listening. She stopped abruptly, peering into the darkness beyond the stage. "Who's there?" she called, her heart racing. For a moment there was silence. Then footsteps and a figure emerged from the shadows of the auditorium. It was Mr. Huang. "How did you find me?" May asked, embarrassed at being caught in this forbidden place. "I followed the music," he said simply, walking up the steps to the stage. "Jun mentioned you might be practicing somewhere unconventional." May waited for the reprimand. The lecture about breaking rules and trespassing on school property after hours. Instead, Mr. Huang sat on a dusty chair near the piano. "Play it again," he said, "from the beginning." Surprised, May turned back to the piano. With Mr. Huang watching, she felt her nerves return. But as she began to play, the familiar notes calmed her. She gave herself over to the music, forgetting her exhaustion, the dust, the sticky keys, even Mr. Huang's presence. There was only Chopin's beautiful, complex emotional journey expressed through her fingers. When she finished, the final note hung in the air of the empty theater. May realized she had closed her eyes while playing. She opened them to find Mr. Huang watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Well?" she asked nervously. "You've found it," he said quietly. "Found what?" "Your voice. Not Chopin's, not mine, yours." He stood up. "There are still technical issues to address, but the heart of it is there now." Relief washed over May. "So you think I'm ready?" "Not yet. But you will be." He looked around the abandoned theater. This place was built in 1922. Some of the greatest pianists of the century performed on this stage before the new concert hall was built. There's history in these walls. He turned back to May. "I'll speak to the administration about your practice room situation. In the meantime, consider this your private studio. Just be careful not to get caught." After he left, May remained at the piano, feeling strangely encouraged. She hadn't mastered every note of the ballade yet, but she had found something perhaps more important: her own way of expressing its emotional depths. For the next 2 days, she split her practice time between the old theater at night and a small practice room Mr. Huang had somehow secured for her during school hours. The showcase was now just 2 days away, and while she still made mistakes in the most difficult passages, she played with a confidence and emotional clarity that had been missing before. On the final evening before the showcase, as May packed up her sheet music in the old theater, she heard the side door open. Tensing, she prepared excuses for why she was there after hours. But it wasn't a security guard or teacher who appeared on the stage. It was Lizzie. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, looking around at the dusty theater with distaste. John let it slip. "Thought I should see for myself." May said nothing, continuing to gather her things. "I heard you play just now," Lizzie continued, walking toward the piano. "Through the door. Come to mock me one last time before tomorrow?" May asked, too tired for fear or anger. Lizzie ran her finger along the top of the piano, leaving a trail in the dust. "No," she seemed uncharacteristically uncertain. "I came to tell you that you're playing it wrong." "Wrong?" "The middle section. You're taking too many liberties with the timing." Lizzie sat at the piano and played a brief passage. "It should be more controlled, like this." May watched Lizzie's perfect technique, her precise timing. "That's how you play it," she acknowledged. "But I play it differently." "You play it incorrectly," Lizzie insisted. "I play it my way." May found herself standing taller, more confident than she had ever been in Lizzie's presence. "My interpretation is different from yours. That doesn't make it wrong." Lizzie looked genuinely perplexed. "But the score is a guide, not a prison," May finished. Mr. Huang says music without personal interpretation is just notes on a page. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the dusty piano, the privileged prodigy and the scholarship girl, each seeing the other clearly perhaps for the first time. Finally, Lizzie stood. "Well, we'll see what the judges think tomorrow, won't we?" But her usual venom was missing. As she turned to leave, May called after her. "Lizzie, why did you really come here tonight?" Lizzie paused at the edge of the stage. "I've never had competition before," she said without turning around. "It's unsettling." After she left, May sat in the empty theater replaying their strange encounter. For the first time, she realized that Lizzie's perfect technique and expensive training came with their own kind of pressure. The expectation of flawlessness, the fear of falling short. Tomorrow they would compete on the same stage, playing the same piece. But May no longer saw it as a contest she could only lose. Instead, it felt like a chance to show that there were many ways to bring music to life, including her way. She played through the ballade one final time, embracing both its technical challenges and emotional depths. Tomorrow would bring judgment, perhaps failure. But in this moment, in this dusty, forgotten theater, the music was perfect. The day of the fall showcase arrived with golden autumn sunshine streaming through stained glass windows, illuminating the grand concert hall of Wellington Academy. Built 50 years ago by a wealthy donor, the hall was a miniature version of Europe's finest concert venues, with perfect acoustics and seating for 500. Today, every seat would be filled. May stood backstage, peering through a gap in the curtains at the audience filing in. Men in expensive suits, women in elegant dresses, teachers looking both proud and nervous, and students whispering excitedly as they found their seats. In the front row, she spotted her mother and grandmother, looking slightly out of place but beaming with pride. Her mother had taken a rare day off work to be here, losing a day's wages they could ill afford. "I have to play perfectly," May whispered to herself. "For them, perfection is overrated," came Jun's voice behind her. "Play with your heart instead." Jun was dressed in the formal performance attire required for all showcase participants, a simple black dress with modest heels. On May, the borrowed dress hung slightly loose despite last-minute alterations by her grandmother. "I'm playing fourth," Jun said, checking the program. "Violin concerto. Nothing too flashy." She glanced at May. "You're last." "Right after Her Highness." May nodded, her mouth too dry for words. Being placed last meant Mr. Huang believed her performance would leave a strong final impression. Or perhaps he just wanted to minimize the comparison with Lizzie's technically flawless rendition. "Don't look so terrified," Jun said, squeezing her shoulder. "Remember why you play. Why did she play?" May had never really asked herself that question. Because she loved how music made her feel? Because her father had believed in her talent? Because proving herself at Wellington meant a chance at a different future? All of those reasons, perhaps, and something more, because when she played, she felt fully herself in a way she never did otherwise. The stage manager, a harried-looking teacher with a clipboard, began herding performers into the green room where they would wait their turns. 15 minutes until we begin," she announced. "Everyone please stay quiet and focused." The green room was tense with nervous energy. Some students paced. Others sat with eyes closed, mentally rehearsing. In one corner, Amara was doing finger exercises while Tao tuned his violin with intense concentration. And there was Lizzie, sitting perfectly still, her posture impeccable even in the uncomfortable folding chair. Their eyes met briefly across the room. Lizzie gave a small nod, not friendly exactly, but lacking the usual contempt. Progress of a sort. The first performer was called, a flautist whose hands shook visibly as he left the room. From backstage, they could hear the polite applause as he was introduced, then the sweet, clear notes of his flute filling the concert hall. One by one, the students were called, performed, and returned, some jubilant, others fighting back tears of disappointment. Jun winked at May as she left for her turn, violin in hand, and returned 20 minutes later with flushed cheeks and a satisfied smile. "Good crowd," she whispered to May. "Responsive. You'll do great."